We're glad that anybody shows up.
Okay, I just started the recording.
Okay.
So here we go.
Act serious now.
Okay. So we're going to be covering mixed topics. Okay. We focused on the geometry is what we're going to focus on tonight. But before we get there, Marjorie's come up with some very interesting stuff. And I just want to put this up here so that everybody can see it. Just give me a second.
We keep discovering new layers kind of what we've been doing for the past few years, and it's becoming, I like it, it's becoming looser and more interwoven, whereas things were kind of more separated before and more in separate silos, where now I think they should be more integrated, and that's kind of what's happening. And we're discovering a lot of new materials of other people that are on this same wavelength, and that's really gratifying, very validating. And we want you to know that we're not the only nuts, making this up.
Right. Yeah, the thing to keep in mind here, this is a picture, but it's really the advances in astronomy over the last 100 years that have made pictures like this possible. And they're in many wavelengths. They're not just in visible light. They're in infrared, they're in ultraviolet, they're in X-rays. So the pictures can look radically different, depending upon what's reflecting from what. So
and how they enhance them nowadays. They enhance them with all these different kinds of filters and instruments.
So this is music. We're going to play music. And what goes with this is Marjorie's got some text, which is actually a poem.
Well, they're going to read it. We have others for later, but right now, if we play this correctly,
okay,
the woman who put this together is actually going to read it.
Okay. So here we go. This is just a prologue. Oh wait, this isn't on. Do you hear anything? I don't hear anything. Hold on, let me just stop this.
Creating themselves.
There she is.
Did you hear anything there?
Yep.
I just heard her, but I'm gonna make sure the volume is cranked up. Yep, the volume's up all the way. Okay.
By Patty Ann Rogers. 1. Formed in the
Can you hear this?
center
I can't make it any louder.
Galaxy.
No, we can hear it.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Whirlpool images of froth and flume and fulcrum, with the center image of herring circling like pieces of silver swirling fast, a shoaling circle of deception. In the whirlpool perfume of sex, in the deepest curve of a lily's soft corolla, created within the image of the Creator's creation. Born with the same grimacing wrench of a tree-covered cliff, split wide suddenly by lightning and open to thundering clouds of hail and rain, cured in the summer sun as if in a potter's oven, polished like a stone rolled by a river, emboldened by the image of the expanse beyond Earth's horizon, inside and outside a circumference in the image of freedom. Given the image of starlight clusters steadily silent above a hillside silence of fallen snow, let there be sleep. 2. Inheriting from the earth's scrambling minions images of thorn and burr, fang and claw, stealth, deceit, poison, camouflage, blade and blood, let there be suffering, let there be survival. Shaped by the image of the onset and unstoppable devouring eclipse of the sun, the tempestuous ecliptic eating of the moon, the volcanic explosions of burning rocks and fiery hail of ashes to death, let there be terror and tears, let there be pity. Created in the image of fear inside a crawfish, skittering backward through a freshwater stream with all 8 appendages in perfect coordination, both pincers held high, backing from the safety of a fallen leaf refuge. Let there be made in the image of the moon, where else would the name of the ivory rock craters shine except in our eyes? Let there be language. Displayed in the image of the rotting seed on the same stem with the swelling blossom, let there be hope. Homo sapiens creating themselves after the manner and image of the Creator's ongoing creation. Slowly, eventual, alert and imagined, composing, assembling until the right chord sounds from one brave strum, the right strings reverberating, fading away like evening. Let there be pathos. Let there be compassion, forbearance, forgiveness. Let there be weightless beauty. Of earth and sky, Homo sapiens creating themselves, following the mode and model of the Creator's creation, particle by particle, quest by quest, witness by witness, even though the unknown far away and the unknown nearby be seen and not seen, let there be goodwill in accounting, let there be praise resounding.
Oops, wait on. I gotta go shut this down.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's the first thing, just to set the stage.
Right. And we're going to go to the poem itself.
Here's the actual poem, which we'll send out as a link. So you can see, you'll have the text in front of you to follow along.
Are you able to see the poem itself?
No, it's not on share screen.
I asked you not to take it off.
Hold on, we'll get there. Okay. So here's the text. Here's the video. Here, the link to the video. And here's the poem that she was reading. Okay. There's 3 stanzas, 3 sections to it. This is an ode to dark matter and the mystery of being.
According to the curator.
Yeah.
Let there always be light.
And the poet cannot speak.
That's different. That's somebody
Okay,
else.
other one. Okay.
Just
Okay.
I'm glad you think it's funny. What I wanted to say is that for me, it's this wonderful evocation of the wonder of experience. You know, just that there's this phenomenon called experience. You know, and so let there be sleep, let there be suffering, let there be survival. And that makes me think of a chant by that the Sikhs do, Om Namo Guru Dev Namo, where you're actually thanking life itself
For life.
for being what it is, and being the teacher. Guru Dev means beloved guru, beloved teacher. That without suffering, there's this nothingness. So just the fact that there's anything is such a miracle. And this used to be a regular practice for me until I was like, oh, okay, enough with the suffering. But let there be terror and tears, let there be pity, and let there be home. It's just, to me, it's a really deep evocation of our experience on this planet, which I don't think animals, I think they do have a sense of beauty and wonder, but I don't think they have compassion in the same way, forbearance, forgiveness. Let there be weightless beauty. Just that human beings are in this unique position, apparently, of creating ourselves, following the mode and model of the Creator's creation, particle by particle, quest by quest, witness by witness, even though the unknown far away and the unknown nearby are seen and not seen. Let there be goodwill and accounting. Let there be praise resounding. For me, with my background, that's all very Kabbalistic. And the Kabbalistic notion of creation is not that there's a creator creating it. There's no puppet master outside of creation making it on some workbench somewhere. It's all unfolding from within itself. It's this constant blossoming and self-creation out of the nothingness, out of the void, out of the infinite potential that has to separate from itself in order to have any actuality. That's a function of division and making the infinite finite. That couldn't happen without limitation. And so I felt that this this poet, coming from more of a, as far as I know, more of a science background, kind of had the same, although well, that's the point for me, that science, if you go deep enough, it's incredibly mystical. And there's this amazing sense of wonder created with the images of the Creator's creation. But there is no creator and created. It's all one, but it's so diversified and complex. And there's all these happenings. There's with time, with the, even if it's an illusion, the apparent passage of time, things come into creation and pass out of creation. So now, now you can go on.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember, did we cover everything you wanted to cover here on this? Get this out of the way. Any of these other things?
For now.
Here's the same, okay. So we're set. Okay. So
And again, you don't have to stop screen sharing. You can keep sharing.
No,
and
it's
just go to the next thing.
I can't go to the next thing because
Yeah, you can.
it's in PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is not in the browser.
Maybe that's true.
So we're going to go to PowerPoint now. You wanted this. When did you want this?
Later
Okay, fine.
with these. So at some point you're going to break. We really need to rehearse. Don't send this one out to everybody.
Well, here's what we're going to do, okay? We're going to deal with a lot of observations that Ron Cowan did. And in order to do this, I'm going to go back to something I just touched on briefly, which was the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, these Yoga Sutras are found, they're roughly 195 sutras. They're each 3 to 5 words of Sanskrit. And Patanjali was the one that apparently wrote them down around 0 AD. So if you have 195 of these, and there's 3 to 5 words for each of them, you can memorize it. So this undoubtedly was oral for millennia before it was ever written down. No one knows where it started from. But what we have here is it's broken out into 4 books. Let me see if I can pedal through this. This is a Kindle version. Hold on. This is put together by someone named Edwin Bryant. Now, the reason why this thing is as long as it is, if you just took the 195 sutras, you could probably get 10 on a page, and then you'd have back to back. You might end up with 20-page pamphlet, all the Yoga Sutras. But what he did here, and what we're dealing with, is he took each of the sutras, and then he did a transliteration from Sanskrit so you could hear what it sounded like. And then he did a translation into English. And then he does an interpretation of what the sutra says. And then that's followed by typically 10 pages of commentary. And the 10 pages of commentary deal with, well, in 200 AD, so-and-so wrote this, but actually in 350 AD, this other person kind of said that was all wrong. And here's what really should have been said. And then in 600 AD, this other person chimed in and fixed it all up. But in 800 AD, that all got put away by someone else. So there's a huge amount of commentary here. We're not going to deal with the commentary. We're just going to deal with what we got here. So here we go. There's some background stuff here that he put in. You can see chapter 1 deals with meditative absorption. So there's about 50 sutras here that are dealing with controlling your breathing, and some things related to postures. And all of this is related to trying to tune out on the distractions that are all around you that are just really terrible, that take you away from this. You're trying to step away from everything. Chapter 2 goes into much more, another 50 sutras goes in much more practice. Now we're going to go to chapter 3. Most people never bother to go to chapter 3 or even chapter 4. We'll go to chapter 3 and we'll see what it says.
When you doing it in a class, it's this wonderful sense of a handbook, for consciousness and for our minds, and how to tame it and how to work with it by this incredibly wise and understanding person who's also incredibly non-judgmental And it's like, well, if this doesn't work for you, you might want to try that, and if that doesn't work, then try this. And he'll give you, several different approaches for what the obstacles might be in this very matter-of-fact, light-handed, even-handed way. And it's really like this owner's manual, of how to deal with the mind in this very benign way.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is really the first two chapters would encompass what the West thinks of as yoga. So the intent here is to learn to meditate so that you can lose self, the notion of self, that you can end up tuning out on all the noise that's all around you.
And the whole point of the postures is actually to calm the mind.
And with the breathing too.
Right.
And then what goes with it is you can concentrate on loving yourself and compassion and loving others. And that's really the point in this, is to push on those things. Okay. Now, chapter 3, there are these mystic powers that come up that people have noticed that they have along the way. But this is really a distraction. This is not the point of doing yoga. The point of yoga is to achieve this enlightened notion, this loss of self, so that you can concentrate on love and compassion. But by the way, that you get these mystic powers. But don't get hung up on them. And so let's go through and look at what
and some people consider them to be a major pitfall,
right,
along the way, that distract you from the path. And there's some interesting history, I think, with Bruce and his brother Ron, that Ron was developing this, what I don't know what you would say, second sight or third sight, clairvoyance, to see things on the microscopic level. It's called a siddhi. And a lot of Buddhists would consider that a tangent, as a big major sidetrack not to get too hung up in, and kind of a waste of time.
Right. Here, I'll just show you. Here is the Sanskrit for Sutra 3.1. So the Sanskrit is here. Here's a transliteration of it. So even though you can't read this, this is the sutra here. This is what you would come up with. And then down here, there's a translation that occurs. You can see the words are just a literal translation: place, bound or fixed, of the mind and concentration. So this is the first sutra. We're going to skip ahead in a second.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why do you think you have to lose yourself in order to love another or feel compassion?
Bruce, do you want to chime in?
Well, basically, the self itself is a distraction, and it's a form. It's based on history that is not wholesome. So, I mean, it's a rather crude example, but you can take somebody who has a self that has a lot of anger and rage in it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good example of where that person cannot find any reality of the powerful compassion which the mind is actually capable of having. So a lot of in Buddhism, a lot of it is how to dissolve the distractions that the mind, especially when there's a self, thinks it's real or reality, whereas in actual fact, it's just an appearance, it has no reality whatsoever. When you get into the deeper levels of realization, all these things just simply disappear on their own accord, which is the main idea behind Buddhism. And then
And
you can
so, yeah, Bruce, to go back to your question, then, why do you need this for love and compassion? How does this help you?
well, in order to expand the deeper realities of love and compassion, you have to be clear of these distractions, basically.
Is that okay, Patty?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Is distractions the same as attachments?
Correct. Attachment is one of the distractions.
Yeah, the metaphor I tried to use was that we're actually in a movie screen, and by achieving this concentration, we step out of the movie screen and we're sitting there in the audience in a chair looking at the movie, which is what we think is life, but it's not.
So it's
And
like you're completely losing your self. It's that you're trying to rid that self from all of these distractions and attachments,
right,
so that you can concentrate on love and compassion.
right.
Well, what happens is when you're into a lot of meditations, a lot of these formations of the mind or distractions actually simply disappear, and they never arise again in the mind. So when the mind gets into these expanded states of consciousness, you're actually able to perceive things that you haven't even imagined possible up until that time. So the mind itself actually clears itself as it goes deeper. So a lot of the distractions that you have in earlier stages of meditation simply don't arise at all anymore. They're simply gone forever.
Yeah, that's difficult to do, but
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
Ron worked at it, and Bruce worked at it. And
I see the value. And we've all tried that. It's hard.
Say it again.
I said we all try that, going into meditation and clearing your mind of distractions or attachments, or both, both is a difficult, a challenging discipline. It's hard to clear yourself from distraction.
Yeah, well, a lot of these things, big things, don't start appearing until you've been doing it for about 20 years. So it's
Gotta get started.
yeah, Bruce and Ron both went through intense meditation daily for decades before they got to this stage. I started meditating heavy duty in the year 2000, so it's now 23 years later. I do it every day. With Marjorie. So here we are. What we're going to talk about here are these CDs, SIDDHIS. These are mystical powers, and they were attained by performing some yama on various objects, which we'll come to. So in Sutra 4, samyama is defined as a progressive application of the last three limbs of yoga. And this in turn is pivotal to an understanding of these mystic powers and becomes the central theme of the rest of the chapter, and so forth. So let's just skip ahead here, because this is gonna take us away from this. I'm just gonna skip way ahead to, I'm gonna go actually to Sutra 20, 3.20. And you can get this book off Amazon. It's let's see. Yeah, this is here. You see the translation of each of the words, but here in each of them, he has samyama is applied on different stages of samadhi. Okay, so just let me go back here and you'll see. Here's the Sanskrit. Here's the transliteration of the Sanskrit. Here's the word by word translation with the transliteration. And then here's the overall freeform translation, which, as you can see, is it's different than simply doing it word by word. But that's what good translations are. So now, hold on. I'm just going to rocket ahead here. We're almost there. And the thing that I've always found amazing was how few people that know yoga, quote unquote, don't know this, what we're talking about here. There's 195 sutras. How long does it take to read them? To see what's going on. So hold on here. Wait, what am I up to? I'm up to 17. I want to get up to 20. Hold on. It's the problem with this is the PC version of Kindle. Okay, hold on. This is 20. Yep, 20. Let's see. Knowledge is not accompanied by its object, since the object is not the object of the yogi's mind. So the yogi may be able to perceive the emotional state of mind of others, but he or she may not necessarily be aware of the object causing that state of mind. So the yogi may be able to read someone's amorous state of mind, for example, but not necessarily know who the beloved one is, or perceive fear in someone's mind, but not the tiger that is causing it. So, you start to see what's going on here is the powers that you have, these CDs, you're able to sense the emotional state of some other person. Okay, this is not for the faint of heart. Okay, here's Sutra 21. By performing samayama on the outer form of the body, invisibility is attained. This occurs when perceptibility is obstructed by blocking contact between the light and the eyes. So we're gonna come back to this about how we think this actually occurs, how you could possibly become invisible. But this, for example, there's several instances in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where Jesus of Nazareth is preaching to a crowd, and they get angry. He's at the temple, and he just walks out. Well, he walked out by becoming invisible. Okay, they were all set to stone him, but he's gone. And we'll give you reasons for why this is plausible. So we have the ability to become invisible. Here's number 22. Karma is either quick to fructify or slow. By samayama on karma or on portents, knowledge of one's death arises. Do you have any comments on this, Bruce?
Yeah. Yeah, well, karma is has a cause and is the main cause of a lot of the defilements that are in the mind. They have a history, and in order to transcend those, it takes a lot of work, but it actually happens naturally as the mind goes deeper. Like in a sense, the objective of meditation is to find the level of the mind that you have already that knows the history of thousands of lifetimes. You have that level of reality in your own mind already, but you can't find it because of all the distractions. So through a lot of meditation and practice and so on, you can actually find that level of mind that's already there in your own mind. And a lot of the clarity is already present in the mind. And the distractions and so on simply disappear. So it's, yeah.
The thing that I found amazing was that Ron Cowan had incarnated as Ron, but in a previous life, he was this incredible world-class mathematician, Emmy Noether. And Emmy Noether's piece of his soul was there with him. We would have these three-way conversations with Ron and me and Emmy. And you know, and Ron would say, "Oh, Emmy wants to tell you this, or pay attention to that, or whatever it was." Okay, that was who Ron was. He was able to capture that past life in that way, which is, shall we say, different. So anyway, let's go ahead here. You're starting to see what's in this and why people have read these things and they just ignore it because they say, this couldn't possibly, how could you possibly be invisible? That's ridiculous. Okay. Patty, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay. And so if you achieve this samayama with friendliness and so forth, you get a variety of strengths. Okay. And so we're going to go through these. Let's see. He destroys all envy and hatred in his heart, comes completely free of malice and harshness, has no thoughts of harming others ever to darken his heart. So you could see this is something that a lot of people, you know, would aspire to, I would think. But anyway, now we'll go to the next one.
Yeah, but that is actually what happens when you do a lot of meditation. Those deeper states actually arise naturally.
Right, and it's wonderful. Here we go with number 24. By practicing samayama on strengths, you attain the strength of an elephant. Well, how in the world could you possibly be as strong as an elephant? You know, what's going on here, it appears, is that you're able to access, I'll just say, these higher realms, and the higher realms control the forces that are around us. So you yourself, you know, this is how a yogi, as I mentioned to you in Marco Polo's travels, he saw these two yogis levitating in front of him. Well, they each weigh, I don't know, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, you know, but they've got the ability to control the forces that are strong enough to just lift them up 3 feet off the ground. Just as an example of what's going on here. And that was just what they chose to do. You could be much stronger. You could be, as they said, as strong as an elephant if you wanted to be. But it's not you yourself. You're gaining access to these powers that are there.
And these things are recorded, you know, like an emergency where a mother's sees her child pinned under a car and suddenly has the strength to lift the car off the child,
Right.
and just being kind of like out of her own body, something automatic comes in and takes over and gives her the strength
Right.
that she obviously normally would not have. But these things can be cultivated on purpose as well. I'm not saying I've ever.
Yeah, well, Ron
that.
did this. Remember, I showed you like he had pictures of an electron. Okay, but I mentioned the electron is vibrating like crazy and it's flying all over the place. So what he's using this strength for is to stop it from vibrating, which and it's doing this millions of times per second. It's flying everywhere, even though it's very small. You use it to go do this is an incredible accomplishment. It requires, a huge amount of strength, and yet that's what he did day in and day out with all of these observations. Okay, here's number 25. By directing the light of cognition, one obtains knowledge of subtle, concealed, and remote things. Okay, so this is this notion of clairvoyance that I touched on. Okay, that the yogi, for example, just sitting there, they can go sense where you are. The defense, the U.S. defense agencies have people that they want them to go. They call it remote viewing. So they want them to go look in the safe that's in the Kremlin that has all these secret documents for the Kremlin war plan, and they want to have them read these things and so forth by just sitting in the United States somewhere. And there apparently are people that have done this. I haven't personally met them, but I've been told they exist. So it goes both ways. The Russians have people that are trying to read the U.S. war plans. Okay, but you can look near or far. So you can go near. Ron was focusing near and looking down into the nucleus of the atom and down into the structure of space itself. Or he was looking out afar. He was looking out into the far reaches of space as to what was going on. I'm just looking to see if there's anything here to highlight.
I'd like to just point out the overview of these incredible abilities in the mind. In the Buddhist understanding of the mind, these abilities are a part of your own natural mind. Like you're born with all these abilities naturally, and it's a level of your reality that's already in existence in your mind. So in a sense, the main purpose of Buddhism is simply to clear away the obscurations and the distractions, so you naturally find these remarkable things that are already in your own mind already. That's kind of the overview.
Yeah, here's an example they've got right here. Suppose that you were an ant. So people, incarnate into an ant. That's what they do. And then you die and you reincarnate. Now you're an elephant. So, you've got a totally different body, different senses, different strengths, etc. What's the limit on this? It appears, there might be no limit to this, that you can go as far as you want, or as into space, or down into as much depth as you want.
The obstacles, there was if you just go back a bit, they talk about the kleshas, or the things that obscure this clear vision
right,
was awareness, where there are no kleshas to obstruct it. Once the
Right.
kleshas are eliminated, then one can see how the internal logic of this kind of metaphysics requires the sita to be all pervading. And thus, from the perspective of the sutra, go to the next, aware of everything, aware of anything within, which is another way of conceptualizing omniscience.
right,
And it's because you're tapping into the oneness, you're joining the oneness, you're becoming one with the oneness, that these things are knowable if you open yourself to
yeah, to these, this path here. Here's number 26. By performing samayama on the sun, arises knowledge of the different realms in the universe. So apparently there are 7 lokas, worlds, or realms in his new cosmography, and this world is one of them, and above it there's space with the stars and everything that goes with it. That's the first realm, is the abode of Indra, the king of gods, and above this is the abode of the Prajapatis, the progenitors. The threefold realm of Brahma, the second creator, is above these. And then there are 7 nether regions or lower realms below the earth, as well as 7 hells where beings live long and painful lives, experiencing the negative karma accrued by their impious deeds. So the point is that there are these other realms, or islands is what they chose to call them, and they have, again, all of these metaphors, but these are just words. They're metaphors for what they are trying to describe is going on here, but it's probably constrained by the fact that this was done in India in 0 AD, and those are the words that the people are familiar with then. They weren't familiar with the language that we use, for example, in Western physics. So they might come back with a very different picture if they were there today. And I'm just, there's only a few more, and then we're going to drop this. Here's number 27. With Samayama, you gain knowledge of the solar system and on the moon. Okay, so this is what Ron did, was he was able to go out into space, not just in the solar system or the moon, but to the far reaches of space, thousands of light years away, millions of light years. And with I skipped over this, by Samayama on the pole star, the North Star, comes knowledge of the movement of the stars. So you're looking at the stars themselves. That, again, this is the so-called great year, that the pole, the North Pole, the axis that the Earth is spinning on, points up and goes around in a little circle, but it takes 25,000 years to go do this, and it goes through 12 different houses in doing this. So we just entered this age of Aquarius. Each of these segments is 2,160 years long, and they clearly felt that knowing this was important, that there was something deep about this.
I think that there's a theory that that's actually the source of all the myths, of all the traditions, is that it was a way of recording the patterns. That they're mnemonic devices for
Right.
remembering that this cycle takes 36 years and this one takes 48 years, and when they're together like this, it means this, and so that's where all the stories come from. There's a wonderful book about this that Barth and I, that was one of the things that brought us together when we were first getting together and realizing we had read so many of the same strange books, including the Tao of Physics. It's called Hamlet's Mill, and it was actually written by somebody at MIT, where Bart went. When they were both there at the time, but one was came up in MIT culture, and I guess it's a questionable hypothesis, but it's to me it's a better explanation. They weren't just making up these stories about things. They were about significant things that they took great pains to to record and pass on about these cycles. And they were aware of the precession of the equinoxes, and they had sticks on the hillsides that they measured those intervals with. But also within that, the cycle of Saturn and Jupiter was considered to be like the minute hand, whereas the more gradual overall movement was the hour hand. And they think that that's actually part of what they were talking about with the three kings when Jesus of Nazareth was born, that it was the incarnation of a major soul. And they were three astrologers who traveled to encounter him, because it had been predicted, just as as it's done now with the Dalai Lama, the Dalai Lama's successor. Somehow these things are interwoven into what I see as archetypal patterns, but I think it's a lot more mysterious than even Jung gave it credit for being.
Yep. So
The archetypes are kind of living us. We think that we live them and that they express themselves in our myths, but I think they have the life of their own, and we become a part of that, if that makes any sense.
and they're evolving all the time too. So it isn't anything static. We're almost done with doing this, and we're going to get on to. So we do the navel plexus, the navel of the body comes knowledge of the arrangement of the entire body. So by focusing on this on a micro level, you develop intimate knowledge of your own body, and you can understand everything that's going on. And probably what this means too is that you can cure yourself. Okay, that if you get sick, you can just draw on the strength of your body there to heal whatever it is, to overcome whatever disease you've got. And that's
So this is a lot of what Ayurveda was about.
Yeah.
You know?
And there are examples of some of these yogis that don't eat anything that anyone can find for years, or that they don't sleep, or they don't have any reason to go to the bathroom ever. Okay, I mean, this is just things that they've done because they viewed it as a waste of time, and that's what happened. And I let me do one last one here.
So this part is a bit about
Well,
the
this
ability
is
to-
all what Ron achieved, okay?
right, but the ability of self-healing and lack of dis-ease, was that
Right.
part of what Ron did too?
I think this comes to everybody in different ways, and so he concentrated much more on the clairvoyance in going down into the and I never heard him really talk about healing himself. Did you Bruce ever? I never this never came up when we were talking.
But he would focus on the button on his shirt, right?
Well, just to give you another example of his ability, he can look at anyone's mind and can tell what happened in their previous lives,
right. Including his own. So for example, he made it a point of saying that he was there for the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, but he was there as a soldier, as a spear carrier, because Herod had sent out the word that there was this Messiah that was going to be born, and it was important to kill all the firstborn male children, which was exactly who Jesus was. So Ron was there to protect him. And I said, well, what do you think of the Christmas stories and so forth? He said, well, when you read these stories, they're like fairy tales. You know, when you're really there and you know what happened, those stories don't bear any relation at all. Someone doctored these stories to make them nice stories. So, you know, you can take that with a grain of salt. He said, like, for example, he said, you know, that Jesus was on a bed of straw. That's great. But he said that was a normal thing for the time. Straw is a sign of purity. And here you have this newborn in swaddling clothes. But it wasn't in a stable somewhere. It was in, you know, there were a lot of houses then that actually had part of the house be where they kept the cows and goats. So he could have been there, but not in a stable. Okay.
I think they were sharing body heat a lot of the time.
Yeah. You cuddle up with a goat. That's pretty good.
But to give you an example of the being able to read karma, like he basically was able to tell me what happened in my previous life. And it was enormous benefit for me to transcend the leftover from that lifetime.
Sure.
It's yeah.
Yeah, no, he made it a point of telling me that I, in an earlier life, taught Jesus of Nazareth in his first meditation classes. Okay. But then he went way beyond me. Here's I'm just going to stop here with, this is the 30th sutra, but it says with samayama, on the pit of the throat comes the cessation of hunger and thirst. There's no need to drink anything. There's no need to eat anything. Okay. These are just, you know, so this is there. It's in front of everybody. You can go read the book and judge for yourself. Most people don't even know this exists, let alone, you know, that people would take this seriously and meditate for decades to try and achieve not simply loss of self, but to get the love and compassion that comes with it. And oh, by the way, you would have certain CDs that you'd be very good at. So with that, I'm going to go back to our actual presentation now.
I think the idea is that you're less likely to be preoccupied by them and taken in a wrong direction. You know, clearly some of these things could be used for harm, or at least could be, you know, very distracting and lead to a lot of inflation, you know, at the very least. But by the time you've learned them, you're ready to learn them. You're ready to use them. I think that's part of the process.
Yeah.
Bart has taken classes with the same teacher. How many years?
Well, I met her in 2000, but she'd already been to an ashram in India and this other ashram in Maui, and she teaches hundreds. She did 2 or 3 times a year. She'll teach with a team 200 or 300 other yoga instructors how to be better yoga teachers. So they run a 2-week boot camp.
She's been doing this for about 50 years in this lifetime. And she's about my age. And so we went through it one year. It was once a month. And it felt very familiar and very, I guess the word is familiar and comforting. And I wish I had done it decades ago. And so she kind of does it once every year or two, and now she's doing it with her daughter, who's kind of an apprentice yoga teacher, yogi.
Yeah, this
in the
is
same lineage.
Yeah, this is reading the Yoga Sutras in Sanskrit. So she'll teach us how to pronounce things. We'll chant them, and she only goes through the first two books of the Yoga Sutras, not book 3 that we just covered. But just hearing the Sanskrit, the meaning comes through. It sounds crazy, but you say the words a few times and you start to figure out what does the sutra really mean. So, and Sanskrit is one of these languages that is one of the oldest languages anyone knows. So it's the root language for many other languages.
And it's a sacred language, and the same is true of Hebrew.
Yeah.
And that when you just hear the words and feel the resonance of the sounds, something is transmitted directly.
Right. So what we're going to cover here, we've got on the cover, down in the bottom right corner, this is the Tree of Life, taken from the Kabbalah. This is the Sri Rantra, taken from Hinduism, the I Ching here. This is a geometric shape that's just in here to represent something abstract that comes out of just some sort of geometry. And that's why we call it a sacred geometry. And it all leads into something that looks like strings. That's what this graphic is talking about. Strings are going to resonate, and they're going to capture energy in here, and they're going to start to make up all the particles that are all around us, and they make up the entire universe. Now, the one thing missing from this is where is space itself. This shows the strings, but the strings are in a compartment of space, and space itself is discrete. It's a foam. It's little compartments, little bubbles. And so what I've got over here in the bottom left corner is an abstraction of a set of rules of rules. So the person that came up with this calls it the Ruliad. So space itself is made up of some algorithmic structure that defines what a compartment of space is. And once you start from this, then you end up with everything over here. So this is a very modern point of view. And in fact, modern, I mean, this is in the last 10 years, okay? One of the things we're trying to do here is to, capture as many new ideas as possible here. And this is an example of it, that the notion of algorithms and information could be much more important than anyone realizes. So what we're going to try and cover here in this thing is that it looks like there's a lot of extra energy floating around. The evidence is, which we'll get to, is that what we call our universe is only 5%. The matter in it is only 5% of what is the whole universe. There's something called dark matter or transparent matter. This is matter we can't see. So it just like when you say, here there be dragons, or here there's a void or an abyss on the edge of the sea chart, when you're a sailor in the Middle Ages, okay, this is the unknown matter, but it's 5 times more plentiful than matter. And then there's something called dark energy, which is even twice as big as dark matter in terms of encompassing what makes up the universe. Now, the logic for this is because there's all of this other stuff here, we're only looking at 5% of it. These other things have to live somewhere. And the most logical thing anybody's come up with is there's got to be more dimensions that is holding all this extra energy. But where are they? Where in the world are these other dimensions? So that's what we're going to be talking about. And we'll do a little history here and run through how we ended up going from 3 dimensions for space and 1 for time. And then we ended up coming up with space and time being united in what's called special relativity into space-time. So we had 4 dimensions. And then someone came up with a 5-dimensional space. And then someone else came up with a 10 or even 11-dimensional space. And hold on a second. Let's see if I can go back here. So we'll discuss these higher dimensions. And then I'm going to suggest to you how in the world you get these other dimensions. These are going to be plausibility arguments, hand waving. It isn't. No one really knows how you get these other dimensions. But for right now, this is the best I could come up with. So judge for yourself. And then there'll be an interpretation of what we came up to be a 26 real dimensional universe. So there's 26 real dimensions, not 3 for space and 1 for time. There's another 22 that got left out of the story that we're going to cover. So the first thing we covered is dark matter. And this one up here in the corner here, we've got what the astronomers were able to see in the 1910, 1920 times frame. They saw what on other telescopes were just smudges of light. In fact, were these galaxies. And the galaxies were made up of hundreds of millions of stars, okay, that are there, and they appear to be in spirals, and they're circling. Well, if they're circling, then it didn't take too long till someone did a back of the envelope calculation, plugged in an average mass, say a star in a galaxy is the mass of our sun, and all of these suns, the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of them all are attracting one another with the force of gravity. And then you do some calculations, and you realize that this picture is wrong, that in a very short period of time, hundreds of thousands of years, which in the time scale we're dealing with is nothing, very short period of time, this galaxy come flying apart. The force of gravitation is not enough to do it, unless
to hold it together.
Unless there was other matter there, which we couldn't see, that was transparent or dark, and in fact, this is, remember, 5% of this is what we call matter. Remember, 27% is dark matter. So there's 5 times as much of this dark matter as of matter. And this has been carried out much more refined calculations by this female astronomer, Vera Rubin, who confirmed all this stuff. So we've got a real problem here. But in fact, it's worse than this. We have to include this dark energy. So Einstein in 1916 had developed this theory of general relativity. And this other guy, a priest no less, a Catholic priest, in 1922 wrote Einstein. He said, look, I looked at your equations and I took the simplest possible model I could think of a universe, which is that it's got some stars and space between the stars, and everything I did, there's no way for it to be stable. This universe had to either expand or it had to contract. There was no way for it to just stay there. And Einstein had realized this when he put together his original equation of general relativity. He put in a fudge factor, which was a constant, a cosmological constant is what he called it. And when he saw that the universe, that the observations from these physicists, for example, Edwin Hubble was the one that really did the best observation, showing that the universe was expanding, everything was flying away from everything else. Then Einstein said, well, then I better put this in. But, you know, now what? Now I've got this fudge factor in here. And in fact, it's worse than this. In 2011, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for measurements that showed that the galaxies and stars are not simply moving away from one another, they're accelerating in how they're moving away from one another. So this leads to the obvious thing. If everything's moving away from everything else, then at some point, it's being driven by a force which is stretching the fabric of space itself. And this force, which we can't see, we're going to call dark energy. It's unseen, it's transparent, it's whatever. The other thing that comes out of this is that if everything's moving away, everything started out close to one another. This is the question of the Bible in the book of Genesis and the Gospel of John, that in the beginning was the Word. So here we go. You wanted to use this. Is this a good time to use this?
Maybe, but you can go on.
Okay.
Finish your sentence.
Okay. What Einstein had shown was, in his theory of what's called theory of general relativity, that what we call gravity is actually mass that is distorting space-time itself. So if I have a concentration of mass here, this being a picture of a planet, then the space around it gets distorted. If there's no matter, like out here, have a nice little grid here, then I end up with one type of gravitational field. If I get close to the Earth, I get attracted to the Earth, and I fall down these slides that are here, and get attracted here accordingly. But it's actually the curvature of space-time itself that's changing. It's not really a force so much as the curvature of space-time itself.
But we conceptualize it as gravity. We think of it as a force that's really akin to magnetism.
Yeah.
But it seems to be this other phenomena.
Yeah, and
of the nature of, you know, that which we don't understand yet, but that there's this curvature of space and time.
So after Einstein published this stuff in 1916, another chap named Kaluza sent Einstein a manuscript in 1919, and he said, well, you've got 4 dimensions, so I added a dimension. And when I added this dimension, not only did I get your general relativity, your theory of gravity, but I also got electromagnetism in 5 dimensions. Here it is. And Einstein looked at this and said, you know, this is all correct. I wonder what in the world's going on. And of course, the obvious question comes up, what is this? Where is this 5th dimension? What are we talking about? So there's a lot of effort that went into this. But it did popularize the notion that maybe 4 dimensions weren't enough to describe what's really going on in the universe. There was another guy before Kaluza who had a similar idea, but he ended up trying to do things in a different way, not the way that Kaluza did, and so it goes. So here we go, 5 dimensions, maybe that's better than 4. And there's a long theory that goes with it. I'm going to skip over this here, and you can take a look at this later. Think of this as background material. But the one guy that stepped up to the plate was Oscar Klein, who in 1926 was able to come up with an interpretation of what in the world this fifth dimension was. Okay, so he suggested that the fifth dimension could be curled up around one of the dimensions that we have, and it could be curled up to form a little circle. So if I look along a particular axis, I'd have curled around it a circle with the radius of the circle would be incredibly small, 10 to the minus 30 centimeters, or 10 to the minus something on the order of 10 to the minus 35th meters, something there, something which is inconceivably small. And
do you have that image of the
yeah, that's what I'm coming to.
the cylinder?
Yeah, and so we're going to come to this. Where did it go? Nope, I didn't put the picture here.
Oh,
So let me get out of this and we'll go to the picture. So what he was trying to do here, oh wait, where's the which one is it?
I have no idea. That line.
I'm just going to go to our website, to our resources page. I'm going to go back into screen share. So this picture here, I'm circling here, what Oscar Klein did was he said, okay, we have a circle here, and the radius of this is very, very teeny, and it goes around one of our existing dimensions. So if that's the case, then here's the axis for this dimension, and he just wrapped the thing around it into this plane that's here. We're going to come back to this in a little bit to see what's going on. So no one else had any ideas as well. So his idea carried the day. And let me just go back here. Oh, wait. I got out of, hold on a second. That's the problem with this stuff is once you leave it, it has a life of its own. So here we are back here. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go forward in time. In the 1960s, there was a new idea that came up with, it was called string theory, where you would have a string, which is a one-dimensional object. Unlike here in this five-dimensional theory, one of the dimensions was much smaller than the other. They said, well, why don't we just have a bunch of strings, and they'll each be very small, and each of them will correspond to another dimension. So they did that, and the guy who's basically led the charge on this, Edward Witten, you could view this person as the Pope of string theory, okay? He's an incredible mathematician and theoretical physicist, and he led the charge in terms of trying to understand all these things. Now, string theory, in part, gets all of its respect because the physicists don't have any other game to play. They've racked their brains. They try this, they try that. they always come back to nothing works except for string theory. But what does that mean? Well, to start with, no one's been able to write down any equations for string theory. That's a real problem. And the second problem you have is that no one's been able to propose any experiments that would test string theory against theory. And yet, if you go today and around the world, the only model that's standing is that of string theory, and it's all driven by a very homogeneous group of people that have done these things. So with that as a prologue, what Witten did was he came up with a theory in 10 or even 11 dimensions of these strings vibrating, and that was great. And it went through many iterations. Here we are since the 1960s to today. It's still the only game in town, but everyone's how to come up with any experiments or how to test anything. So this is the thing that carries the day. So what comes with string theory is what is a particular type of manifold. A manifold is something that locally looks like locally it looks like a flat space. So if I'm on a sphere, for example, locally the sphere looks flat, but if I keep running around, walking in a straight line around the sphere, I'll come back to where I started from. So that's a tip-off that it's not flat, because I can't walk on something flat and end up where I started from. So that's a property of a sphere. A different example is having a saddle. A saddle locally is again flat, but once you leave the saddle, you start to end up with all kinds of different things. So all of these things were studied by two mathematicians, Eugenio Calabi and Shengten Yao, and you need some water. Hold on.
Just sit down, just stay there. I'm going.
Mm.
Bless you.
This is a cold that I gave it to Marjorie. Oh, he gave it back to me. So hold on, I can get some water. This is,
Very pretty images.
We're talking about
oh.
a chandelier created out of glass to look like one, too. If we have it reproduced in 3 dimensions.
That would be cool.
Yeah, Calabi thought that this could be useful in physics, and the problem was that he couldn't show that they existed. Existence is the key thing in math. If it doesn't exist, if you can't prove it exists, it doesn't exist.
It could exist.
So Yao was the one that proved that these exist. But the proof was such that Yao received the Fields Medal, which is the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in math, in 1979 for showing this. So this is heavy duty lifting. So here's Kalabi and here's Yao. And what? Mm. The bar down here.
Yeah.
And you should think of these things as we'll see them as 6-dimensional spaces. We're going to use them to get into this. Okay, how in the world do we get these other dimensions? Well, one way is we can simply rotate a dimension. And to show this, we're going to look at space-time. So space-time involves three dimensions, X, Y, and Z, going up and down, right and left, back and forth.
Do you want to take a poetry break and see if your voice comes back?
We could. This would be a good point to take a break.
That's what I was hoping.
Let's let Margie do that. I'm going to get some more water.
We've both been sick. I think we've been giving it back and forth for the past week or so. Oh, so excuse us. Oh. We're having a lot of synchronicities and materials just kind of popping up. And I'm really glad we were able to order it in time because I just learned of this book, I guess about a week ago online. And the author is Rebecca Elson, and it's a collection of poetry and other writings called A Responsibility to Awe, which I think was a nod to Emily Dickinson's line about being a flower is an incredible responsibility, something to that effect. So I want to read to you about the woman. She just passed away a few years ago. Her work focused, she was an astronomer and a physicist. Rebecca Elson's scientific work focused on globular clusters, teasing out the history of stellar birth, life, and death. Born in Montreal, she studied at Smith and took her PhD at Cambridge, where she won an Isaac Newton studentship. She started publishing poems while working on the first Hubble data in Princeton and researched at the Harvard Center for Astrophysics. In 1991, she returned to the Institute of Astronomy at Cambridge. She died in Cambridge in 1999, age 39. I wanted to get that out there first. So part of our purpose is to say Bart isn't making this up off the top of his head. Rebecca Elson was an astronomer. Her research involved dark matter, hidden mass, which can be inferred only from its influence on observable objects. As if from fireflies, one could infer the field. Her poems, too, make inferences and speculate. They set out always from meticulous observation and are not deterred by a knowledge of how little we can know of the universe. A Responsibility to Awe collects her best poetry, along with extracts from her notebooks. The extracts record the ways in which she refined her understanding of the known human forces, love and hunger, fear and hope, and explore her own approaching death. An autobiographical essay provides background to her alert imagination from her upbringing career around the world. So with that, I wanted to read one with this image. You okay?
Yeah.
With this image as a backdrop. She says, some thoughts about the ocean and the universe. If an ocean is like the universe, then waves are stars. If space is like the ocean, then matter is the waves, dictating the rise and fall of floating things. If being is like ocean, we are waves, swelling, traveling, breaking on some shore. If ocean is like universe, then waves are the dark wells of gravity where stars will grow. All waves run shorewards, but there is no center to the ocean where they all arise. And this is just another that kind of struck my fancy. She calls it observing. At the zenith of the night, becalmed near sleep, in your dark blind of dome, you hear it move. And looking up, it's there, so close, you could reach and run your hand across its belly. Feel its vestigial heat, its long, slow curves, each bright nipple where some planet sucks. And then just one more for our interlude here is The Last Animists. I have often said I identify as an animist. They say we have woken from a long night of magic, of cravings, fire for fire, earth for earth. A wind springs up. The birds stir in the dovecotes. It is so clear in this cold light that the firmament turns without music, that when the stars forge the atoms of our being, no smith sweats in the labor. Day dawns, the chill of reason seeps into the bones of matter, but matter is unknowing. Mathematics sinks its perfect teeth into the flesh of space, but space is unfeeling. We say the dreams of night are within us, as blood within flesh, as spirit within substance, as the oneness of things, as from a dust of pigeons, the white light of wings. And when I shared this with Bart a couple of days ago, he said he liked it, but he said, where she says mathematics sinks its perfect teeth into the flesh of space, but space is unfeeling. Bart says, but mathematics is the space. So you're right on. Right on.
Okay. So here we go. Let's see how I do. We're going to cover 3 ways.
I wanted you to say a little bit about that, what I just said. Mathematics sinks its perfect.
Oh, this is what we're going to cover next time. Why looks like mathematics is
the actual space.
Yeah, going to be the actual space or information. So what we're going to do here, we're going to talk about a rotated dimension. I mentioned that we had X, Y, and Z for going back and forth, up and down, right and left. And we also had time, but time doesn't have the same units as length. So you end up in physics, the natural thing to do is multiply time by the speed of light. So this is, speed is meters per second, times seconds means we have meters. Well, the problem with that is that time by itself, we can't go up and down, right and left, back and forth. It looks like time has to be multiplied by the square root of -1. This is letter I here, okay? So I is the crux of this whole thing. It takes us into looking at what are called complex numbers. Complex numbers are pairs of real numbers. We have a real number, and then we have a second real number, but it's multiplied by the square root of -1. So the first one is called the real part, and the second one is called the imaginary part. And we're going to see that time appears to be a rotated dimension, that it's different than all the other dimensions. So here's a picture showing a real and imaginary axis. And here's a point out here for a complex number, which has real, and then B is the other imaginary part too. That's all fine. Now let's go to a circle. And we'll just start off in a circle here. We're pointing out here, and we start to rotate around the circle up to here. We've gone from entirely real to this is entirely imaginary. And we continue down here. We've gone entirely real, but negative. We go all the way down here. We're entirely imaginary, but negative. We go back up here. We're entirely real. So the thinking is that time, which is real, we think it's real, actually has been rotated by 90 degrees. And it takes us up into some totally different realm that's different than the realm that we're in, the 3 dimensions that we have for space. So that's one way to come up with extra dimensions. I just rotate them, okay? Well, if I could rotate one, how do I do more? So let's look at how to do more. We're gonna go back to these things that are called symplectic. And what goes on here, this is just backup stuff. Let me see if I can find something here. Yeah. Let's go back to our thinking of this, for example, is a real axis, and the thing that's perpendicular to it is an imaginary axis. So this 2-dimensional sheet here is actually one complex dimension. It has a real and an imaginary part. But what we're going to do is wrap it around our x-axis, okay? So we take this 2 real dimensions and wrap it around what we think is the x in our space. It's wrapped around. So these 3 different wrapped around or compactified dimensions themselves, they're each 2 real dimensions. There's 3 of them. So we have a 6 real dimensional compactified space associated with each real axis we have here. So every single dimension we have is associated with 6 with 2 complex, two real axes, 1 extra complex dimension. Now, what happens is we end up doing this 3 times, okay? And let me let me just skip ahead here so you see what's going on. Here's where we seem to live in space and time. I just suggested how in the world we end up with another 6 compactified dimensions. And these make up a 10-dimensional subspace. Here, there's a wrinkle though. It has 3 holes in it. There's 3 holes in these compactified dimensions. We repeat this for dark matter. So dark matter, we take X, Y, Z, and ICT, we multiply it, we rotate it away from these 4 dimensions by multiplying by the square root of -1. We end up with this, IX, IY, IZ, and minus CT. So here we have a 4-dimensional subspace for dark matter. And each of these dimensions here, X, Y, and Z, is going to have 2 real dimensions, or one complex compactified dimension wrapped around it. Oops. And there's 4 holes for this. Finally, we have one up here. And this one runs around. This is compactified. We do the same trick we talked about before, but this has 8 holes. This one for matter has 3 holes. This one for dark matter has 4 holes. So the natural thing to do is connect the 3 holes to 3 of the 8 holes, the 4 holes to 4 of the 8 holes. That leaves 1 hole we can't account for. That means that in this 6-dimensional space, 2 of the dimensions are connected to one another to get rid of the final hole. So if we have a total of 6 dimensions here, but 3 of them are lost, they're tied up with over here. So we've got 3 dimensions here, we've got 2 dimensions here. We've got a total of 18 dimensions, of which 8 of them are holes. So we end up with a net of 10 dimensions. 10 dimensions in total, even though it looks like we have 18 dimensions here. We do have 18 dimensions. We have to account for the holes. The final thing that we have to do is account for the curvature, what sort of a actual manifold it is. And so Ron came up with a set of numbers that I just put in here. We're not going to deal with them, but they describe how it's curved, whatever way.
Show the image again, please.
Show the what?
The image of the Calabi-Yau manifold. You should have it on that page.
So one of these, the one we normally use is the one on the top left. These are all possible Calabi-Yau manifolds, but only some of them are going to be in 6 dimensions. So Ron came up with this through observations, which led to this picture. Let me get there. Which gave us this 26 real dimensional universe. That's what we have. A lot more than just 4 dimensions. Now, the thing that came with this is a bonus, was if we looked at, remember we talked last time about infraurban space. Every compartment of space is covered with this information that's always scanning. Is anything changing? If it is, then it changes accordingly. And the nature of science is we build from the bottom up. So we have built on the information, we end up with physics. Matter has 10 string subquarks. The dark matter has 5 string subquarks. chemistry is made up of all of these things, the electrons and the subquarks. Here for dark matter, because there's no electron, it's all nuclear chemistry. These subquarks all combine to one another. And here we end up with biology, which is DNA and RNA, and something related to bioelectricity. There's an electric field associated with any body that we're aware of. But the problem is that this is mortal. The thing that's immortal are the subquarks and the electrons and bosons. The body that we deal with here is mortal. For the dark matter, the biology we deal with, this is immortal. There's only two things that happen. It's either active or it's quiet. It's just sitting there. If it's active, it's got some way to shake it, get energy. And this is the key thing. So Ron saw examples of both these things. Out in space, there are tubes that are hundreds of thousands of kilometers long of quiescent dark matter. They're just sitting there waiting, floating around in space. When they land on something like a star or a hot planet like Earth, then they come to life, and then they start to grow and do all kinds of things. So those are two ways we can either rotate by multiplying by the square root of -1, or we can compactify. There's a third way we can get more dimensions, and that's the trickiest. This starts off. What do you want?
I think it's disconcerting not to be able to see you.
It starts off in an area of mathematics where we deal with symmetries of different sorts. So the mathematicians have a name for symmetry. They call them groups. So a alternating group is given here as an example. It's got 3 nodes to it. One of them is black. Okay, so I can rotate it. If I rotate it so that the black moves up here, then the 2 white are over here. If I rotate it again, the black's over here. If I rotate it again, the black is down here. Okay, so there's a whole set of groups that follow this as symmetries. When I rotate this thing 3 times, I end up back where I started from. That means it's symmetric. A different example is we take a hexagon here that's here like this, and we can spin it around this axis down the middle. So it's symmetric. It's totally, if I flip it around this axis down the middle, it'll go over here, and then I flip it again, it comes back here. So it has that sort of symmetry. I can rotate it 6 times, comes back where I started from. I can flip it around this axis here. I can flip it around, any axis I could come up with, and then it'll always come back to where it started from. So these are all simple groups. There's a more complicated set that deal with rotations in space, and they're studied by a mathematician called Lee. And together they make up all the groups that anyone knows of. So they're what are called finite simple groups. So every finite simple group is either cyclic, alternating, or one of those 16 types of rotations. However, what's crazy that occurred is in the study of symmetry, it turned out that there were 26 asymmetrical classes of symmetry. 26. Notice the 26. We've seen 26 before. So it looks like what's going on here is that each of these so-called sporadic or unusual groups is associated with one of the 26 real dimensions that we had. So when we go here, one of these sporadic groups is called the monster group. It's called a monster group because it has 47 times 59 times 71 dimensions. That's 196,883 dimensions. And that makes up, it covers roughly 20 of the 26 sporadic groups. The other 6 have other dimensions. So what apparently is going on, we ended up with the mathematicians coming up with their own periodic table of symmetry. They're the 18 finite simple groups all shown up here, but at the very bottom, there's 2 rows of 13 each. There's 2 rows here of 13 sporadic groups, and those apparently are the ones that are tied up with these 26 dimensions. So how do we think about this? Let's take an example. Suppose we're here in space-time, and we raise our energy, is what the word is, you'll see. We raise our energy. So let's think of space-time, to make it simple, it's just being 2 dimensions. If we raise our energy, we go up to a higher dimension. If we go up to a higher dimension, we can still see everything going on in the space below us, but they can't see us because we're up above them. And that's how you become invisible. That's what the mathematicians apparently figured out. Now, this leads to the summary. We've covered all 3 ways that we can come up with extra dimensions. So we come up with 26 real dimensions. This is what Ron observed, 26 real dimensions. But the only thing that can get into all 26 dimensions, all of them, are photons, the compartments of space, and these information scans, along with this funny Higgs boson. That's the only thing that get into all of these dimensions. Maybe the neutrinos can, we don't know. For each of the matter subspace of 10 real dimensions and the dark matter subspace, 10 real dimensions, they have their own sorts of quarks, subquarks. The matter has electrons and neutrinos. But there's probably other matter that lives in these compactified spaces. And that allows us to control what's happening with the electron and so forth. We don't know this, but that's what appears to be plausible. Same thing true for dark matter. Dark matter is simpler in the sense it has no electron. And the final is in these other spaces that are below it. So what in the world is the ties to religion doing this? Well, we have 3 subspaces that are all compactified, 6-dimensional spaces. And for example, Unitarianism says that there's no Trinity. So all of these 18 compactified dimensions should really be viewed by Unitarians as just one space. Christianity and Islam have a Trinity, a Father, a Son, and a Holy Spirit. Hinduism has a Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So the Trinity appears here, reflecting that these mystics sensed these other 6 real dimensional subspaces. Judaism, and the most sacred, most mystical part of Judaism is found in the Kabbalah, observed that the holes that were all connected led to a 10 actual dimension, and the tree of life of the Kabbalah has 10 Sephiroth. 3 of them are lower than the other 7. So most
Higher.
higher. Sorry, got it backwards. But the mystics sensed this. That's what's amazing. Okay, they sensed that there was something like this going on. I talked about the curvature. Ron Cowan did observe the curvature of each of these subspaces. It needs some more work to be able to do anything. So that's it for tonight.
Any questions?
This is you're muted, Patty. You're muted.
Yeah, no,
This was the impetus for doing the course, was to show the mysticism of science. So there's incredible order here. The only thing we've done that's unusual is we use the language of Western physics. But those are just metaphors. And Bruce, with his intense meditation, can sense all this. So he wouldn't use those words, but he can sense everything we're talking about, plus a lot more. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg. Is that a fair statement, Bruce?
Yeah.
It's far richer than what we've done. We're just trying to suggest there's something there.
Well, the Buddhists use poetic terms, I think. You know, they're very metaphorical, and you know, they'll talk about what is it, the dancing.
Oh yeah, dancing.
Woo master.
What are they?
They're like,
what is it,
Worley
Patty?
Brothers?
The Woo Masters?
Yeah, the Woo Masters. Yes.
Yeah.
WU. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they don't have any. They don't have the same vocabulary, the same. You know, we built all this superstructure in science, in Western science, which has led to all these words that I've been using of manifolds and curvatures and holes and on and on. But you know, they just saw it, and you know, you have to say, what is your background?
Well, if you look at Islamic tile work, you know, it's just amazing the way it looks like.
Yeah,
that's contemplating different dimensions folded up.
Yeah, there's a suggestion there that the Islamic side of things came up with tilings that were never discovered in the West until in the last 50 years. People thought they were impossible. They thought, oh, to do tiles, you need squares, or you need triangles, or you need rhomboids.
They had 5-sided shapes that were really
or they had, you know,
could make a pattern with them.
Yeah, they had shapes that were very bizarre, looked like little serpents, but they all fitted together and covered the complete surface. So there's a suggestion there that there's something much deeper.
Well, and they did come up with 0, didn't they?
Yeah, they the first ones to, but they probably weren't the first ones.
Right.
It's first in the West. So anyway, I apologize for my hoarseness, but that's it for now. We'll catch everybody next week, and hopefully I'll send out the slide deck so you can look at it. But there's a lot of nice YouTube videos of Calabi-Yau manifolds explaining this. And if you want to really go off the deep end, there's a lot of things on the monster group. on why 196,883 dimensions is my favorite number.
We found a few. I think we should take a break and look at some of the videos, Because it shows other people are using a lot of equipment, and big budgets to think about the same kind of thing,
Yeah,
and coming up with ways to visualize it in 2 dimensions is really tough. But
yeah. Everybody you're seeing work in progress. Everybody
Right.
senses there's something there. They just can't quite come to grips with what it is. And we'll wait and see who it is that puts it all together. I think Ron has done a great job with his observations of driving things, but of course, he does. There's no measurement. Okay, like how do you measure a dimension? When Ron was looking at these things, he saw thickness. There was some extra dimensions there. Well, how in the world do you do that? It isn't like you have a dimension meter. So, but I think he was onto something. So that's why we did this class.
Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll see everybody next week. Have a good.
thanks.
We're gonna try and go into Patty asked about sentience and information and algorithm and all of these things that we walked around. So we'll see where we get. Okay. Have a good.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Right.